guys, it's me, Hannah, and yes, it is another video. Sorry, I was keeping so long with these videos, and I promise it won't happen again. So, let's start with Chapter 4 of the Disney Princess book, Rapunzel, A Day to Remember. Okay.
I didn't know we could do that. You know, I always thought that I rescued you from the dragon. You did. It was you that rescued me.
Chapter 4. Maximus looked up as the door to the art shop was swung open. Rapunzel rushed over and threw her arms around the horse's thick neck. We're off to the meadow for an art lesson. We're off to the meadow for an art lesson. We're off to the meadow for an art lesson, she sang out happily. Maximus swatted his tail. He wasn't sure why Rapunzel was so happy, but he was glad to see her smile. Smiling. The shop store bell jingled again, and Flynn and Pascal walked out, arms piled high with art supplies. Pascal had a box of paintbrushes that was bigger than his whole body. Roberto stopped and flipped a sign on a door that read "Gone Painting," and then walked up the shop. "Follow me," he said with a huge grin. "I'm sure there will be some fresh meadow grass for you to munch on while we paint," Rapunzel said, encouraging Maximus to follow. Maximus tilted his head. That carrot had been good, but a meadow filled with sweet green grass sounded delicious. He wouldn't let that distract him from keeping an eye on Flynn, though he trailed after Rapunzel and the others. It's not that far out of town, Roberto told them. There's a shortcut here behind the shop. They followed Roberto to a steep stone stairway behind the store. Getting down the steps was tricky for Maximus, but he kept up. "How much farther?" Flynn asked. His arms were beginning to hurt, and he was having trouble seeing over the wide road he was carrying. Plus, Rapunzel had just handed him Pascal's paintbrush box. Just around the bend, Roberto called over his shoulder. Rapunzel skipped alongside Flynn. If he hadn't climbed up to her tower, none of this would be happening. She looked over at him. "I've decided I'm going to paint you first." See Roberto and Flynn, Rapunzel, and Maximus climbing down the stairs. I'm sorry, so sorry. She said, smiling mysteriously. I want to give you a gift. Thanks, Flynn said, trying to balance the easels. Pascal scowled. After all these years together, Rapunzel was going to paint Flynn first. Jump just up ahead, Roberto shouted. Right over the hill, right over this hill. A hill, Flynn moaned. He wasn't sure how much farther he could go. So Rapunzel ran ahead. She was too excited to walk. As she came up over the hill, she gasped. She felt as if she were standing in one of Roberto's paintings. The meadow was in full bloom. Wow, she said, Wow, she said. She spun around to take in the whole scene. Then she closed her eyes with her face up to the sun, breathing in the fresh air. She wiggled her toes in the long meadow grass. Ah, you like it, dear? Roberto said when he caught up to her. No, I love it here, she exclaimed. This is a beautiful place. The colors are spectacular. Let's get started, Roberto said. He took the easels from Flynn and set each of them up with a canvas. There's nothing like a blank canvas, he said. He wiped his brow with a handkerchief. So many possibilities. Rapunzel took the box of brushes from Pascal, then set up her palette of paint. There are different kinds of paintings. Roberto said. There are landscapes that show you the scenery around you. You could do a portrait of someone, or a still life that showcases fruits or flowers. Pascal and Flynn both started to yawn, and Maximus put his head down to munch on some sweet meadow grass. But Rapunzel listened to every word Roberto said. She didn't want to miss anything about her first art lesson. You need to find your passion, Roberto said. He pointed to the mountains. It is the land or something else that you want to paint? I want to paint everything, Rapunzel exclaimed. One canvas at a time, Roberto said, laughing. Why not start with a simple landscape? Rapunzel dipped her brush into the green paint. She had spent hours gazing out her tower window at the forest. She had already done many paintings of her tower view. Working quickly, she moved her brush across the canvas. A gentle breeze was blowing, and Rapunzel was glad that her long hair was still braided. She wouldn't have wanted it to get in the way of her artwork. When she was finally satisfied with her painting, Rapunzel turned the canvas around to show Roberto. Bravo! He cried. Very nice. I love how you painted the trees and the sun. Perhaps you could add some shadows, here and cover and over there and over here? Thank you, Rapunzel said. After she'd finished, she looked up and saw Pascal and Flynn asleep on the grass. She saw Pascal and Flynn asleep in the grass. Even Maximus was dozing off. She sighed. Not everyone was as interested in the scenery and painting. Let's focus on the portrait now, Roberto said. With that, Pascal's eyes opened. This was his cue. He sprang up from the grass and watched as Rapunzel set up her easel, but she was only looking at Flynn. Flynn, Rapunzel said gently. When he did not move, she grinned at Pascal. And then she moved closer to Flynn's ear and screamed. Wait for it. Wake up! Flynn jumped. Let me go! He screamed, opening his eyes. I'm innocent! To her surprise, the palace guards were not chasing him. He grinned sheepishly, then he narrowed his eyes at Rapunzel. I'll remember that. You'll have to sit over there on that rock, Rapunzel told him. The light is perfect there, on the rock, Flynn said, wriggling his nose. That the cold, hard rock? Rapunzel scowled. The cold, hard rock? Rapunzel scowled and pointed at the rock. Okay, he said, remembering the frying pan. Yeah. Pascal climbed up on the rock as well, but the gray colors didn't suit him. He wanted to stand out more, so he changed his skin to a bright green color. The sun was hitting him right in the eye, so he jumped to the grass. But if he were green in the grass, Rapunzel wouldn't be able to see him. Quickly, he changed to a deep red. Pascal, Rapunzel scolded. If you keep changing colors and positions, I can't paint Flynn's portrait properly. Pascal hung his head. Flynn's painting? Wasn't Pascal going to be in it? He curled his lip and scooted off behind a tree to sulk. Rapunzel put some more paint on her palette and looked up. Flynn, what are you doing? She asked. Flynn was frantically moving his arms around his head. I'll get that little pest, he said. He grumbled. He was trying to swat a fly that was buzzing around above him. I can't paint you when you're moving all around, said Rapunzel. Do you think you can manage to sit still? Maximus neighed and gave Flynn a stern look. He wondered if Flynn could sit still long enough for Rapunzel to paint him. It didn't seem likely. the hardest stroke is always the first one. Roberto said, took his handkerchief out, and patted his forehead. You need to capture the moment for the portrait to be truly great. Rapunzel wanted this painting to be great. She was determined. Carefully, she mixed that brown paint with some golden highlights and began with Flynn's hair. She was enjoying working in the fresh air. Rapunzel had never thought how about sunlight could change her painting. When she looked up to check the length of Flynn's hair, she saw that he was fast asleep again. The pesky fly was sitting on top of his nose, and his mouth was wide open. Suddenly, Flynn began snoring loudly. Rapunzel put her hand onto her mouth to stiff her laughter. She didn't want to wake Flynn, at least not yet. She dipped her brush in some black paint and drew a little fly on Flynn's nose. She tried not to laugh as she painted. What a funny portrait this will be, she thought. Roberto had said to capture the moment. That was exactly what she was going to do. Well, I guess this is it for chapter 4. And be sure to listen. And be sure what happened. When I read chapter 5. I'll see you soon.